Hey guys, this is Rocking3, being the live commentary Forza 6, and this is going to be kind of a general parts and tune, actually more of a tuning aspect. This is kind of my starting spot for E and D class cars. I haven't tuned a lot of higher class cars yet, but with the slower, lighter cars, this has kind of been a basic tune. Kind of my starting point. You guys can kind of tweak it from there. But let me go through this Mazda Miata. This one's actually a handling Mazda Miata. It's not especially fast in the D class, but it is a really good handling car. So there's the stats on it, and I did not mean to do that. And I'm going to go to the tunes here. All right, so this is kind of a starting spot for me right now. This is, of course, really early in the game. This could change, but this is kind of a carryover from Forza 5. So for you guys that are about to start doing your own tuning on this Tuesday, this is a really good base for the lower class cars. So tire pressure, I'm a little bit higher than I was in Forza 5. This is 28 and 28. That's a pretty standard starting spot. Make sure you check your temperature on your tires and stuff like that. Gearing, of course, depending on the transmission and the cars that you have. Finding a lot of camber is still working really well in these cars. I'm at negative 3.8 and negative 3.2, and that's just a starting spot for me. I might go up or down a little bit depending on how much the car slides around. I've been zeroing out most of my toes, or at least reducing them close enough to 0 as I can. If it starts at negative 0.2, I might go down to negative 0.1, just kind of cut it in half. And then the front caster, I haven't played with that too much yet. Typically, we've been going up to 5.5 and 6.0 depending on how much more handling you need out of the car. But for a basic start, 5.0 is a good start. Anti-roll bars, so that bottom number, that 2286, has kind of been a default for almost all the cars. So I think for the most part, that's kind of the default. Now, when I ran Forza 5, I was running probably about 9 in the front and 14 in the rear pretty commonly. I might end up back down there, but right now I'm trying to run it a little bit stiffer, and I haven't found too big of a difference right now. It doesn't seem like these quite play the same role as they did in Forza 5 as far as the softer the better. So this one started at 2286 on the bottom, and that's fine. What I did is did a negative 5 for the front anti-roll bars as a starting spot. Now, what this has done in the past, and I will say this is not 100% certain in this particular Forza 6, is that the softer your front anti-roll bars are than your rear, the more oversteer that it provides. And I know there's some people that differentiate on that. They don't like that saying. But I use the anti-roll bars and the springs in the same sense. Is if the front is softer than the rear, it causes more oversteer. And adversely, if the rear is softer than the front, it causes a little bit of understeer. Sometimes you need to do that, though, to balance out your car. If it oversteers a lot, make sure you play with those two settings. And I have had the roll bars in the front be softer than the rears, and the springs be stiffer in the front than the rear, so almost opposite. Sometimes it balances out some cars, depending on which ones you're doing. Some of the mid-engines, I do that a lot in. I might have the settings just opposite of each other. Ride height, I've been keeping things pretty standard. I don't want to get it too low. I don't know some of the tracks. It seems like the rumble strips are playing a little bit more of a factor. They seem to be a little bit taller, a little bit rougher. So I would make sure you don't have too low ride height on some of your cars. Dampening for me, my starting spot is 10.0 and 11.0 on the rebound stiffness. If I need a little bit more understeer, a little bit more dive, I'll actually reduce that down, and I did that with this particular car, but the starting spot was 10 and 11. My bump stiffness is usually 1919, 20, 20, 21, 21, right in there. Sometimes it's 21, 19, any combination between 19 and 21. You can just play with it. Sometimes that's just a little bit of an added tweak. Sometimes when I need a little bit more traction in the rear, I'll reduce this down a little bit, but that's it. I keep it real close in there. Downforce, I've been leaving it stock, depending on if it's a specific type of car. So like if I want top speed, I'm obviously going to the speed. This one's a handling car, so I actually took it a little bit more towards the cornering. It's probably a little bit high, but I haven't done a lot with the downforce yet. There is a difference. Trust me, there's a big difference on how your car handles depending on what you want to do with it. And then the brake, this is my standard brake, 47% and 200%. One of the biggest discussions around the brake is, has it flipped? So when we first started playing Forza 5, we started at 53% and 200%, but it was backwards. So there was some kind of error, and I think they fixed that towards the end of the game, which actually messed me up a little bit because I had to change a lot of my cars back to 47%. But this is a really good starting point. And now keep in mind, depending on the balance of the car, I've gone all the way down to 45. So a lot of the muscle car, heavier cars, even the basic cars that have front engines, I start at 47 and 200%. The nice thing is if you look at your braking distance, just make sure that you're moving the right direction, but don't move too far off of that. I think I've seen as low as 42, but that's usually like a mid-engine Ferrari or something like that. So this is a really good starting spot. And obviously the braking force, that's really high. I know a lot of people that run around 140, 120, so don't feel like you have to start at 200. Acceleration for a front engine rear-wheel drive, this is real common. 25%, 35% is kind of where I start. The deceleration number is if I'm letting off the gas and it's still understeering and it's not turning enough, I'll actually increase that deceleration to a higher number. If the car is, if you're downshifting and braking and the car is kind of twitchy, I'll actually reduce that deceleration as well. Acceleration really depends on the horsepower. The higher the horsepower, usually the lower the acceleration. This is a low horsepower car. I'm just starting out at 25%. I'm going to keep playing with that, but I generally will be right around this mark, 25 and 35%, depending on what kind of car it is. Front wheel drive, I think it's usually 25 and 0 is a starting spot. Front wheel drives work okay with there. If you need a little more deceleration, don't hesitate to take it off to 0. And the all-wheel drive, obviously, we'll have to go through that a little bit later with an all-wheel drive car. But I don't typically have a lot of those. But this is kind of where I start with all of my settings. If you guys have any questions about that, or why I do something, or how can I fix something, I'm more than happy to share with what I know. Sometimes it just depends on the car, and it really depends on how you drive as well. This is how I drive. I drive pretty hard. I brake pretty late. I gas pretty early. Some people a little bit smoother, brake a little bit earlier. But this is kind of where I start. I hope it helps you guys. You guys maybe start there and then start customizing it to your feel and your liking, and I hope it helps you out. Again, this is for the D-Class and E-Class. As I move up, I have a feeling these default settings will change. May not be a lot, but there may be a different starting spot. But hope that helps. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. Later.